Yeah, so look, we've been talking so far about the spiritual attack that we're under, as a society, and just having a bit of a general talk, before we started. So I'll just summarize what we've been talking about in the last half hour. It's fair to say we've been under a massive, massive spiritual attack. It's pretty straightforward to see that right now as a society. You can see attacks, especially on legislation and laws and governments attempting to really take control of the citizens and the people. And it's really goes back to what the book of Ephesians says, which is our battle is not flesh and blood. It's against principalities and powers and rulers and dominions. So I might just start by sharing something that there's a couple of comments that were being made by people before we started. One was Steve Plummer. He made a really good comment about the Leviathan, which is just going everywhere. Like one state's trying to pass laws over here, West Australia, which is designed to limit farmers' ability using Aboriginal heritage and making sure it stays away from the city and inner city elites and targeting the country. And he mentioned it like a big Leviathan. It's just spreading into other states and just about everywhere. And there's no question. And a new world order, if you're going to have one, you've got to control the farms and the food and what people rely on, as well as control the financial system. So I mentioned that when you go into the book of Revelation, for example, and talks about the four seals, the seven seals. The first seal was you can read about a poison dart. The second seal you can read about peace being taken away. The third seal, which I believe we're entering into right now, is a basic straight out economic sustenance reliance attack, on food, economic system, all that kind of stuff. And back in 2020, I shared a lot of webinars where I was sharing what was coming, and I said that there's some things you'd rather not be right on, and this was one of the ones I would love to look back at myself and go, God, I got a little bit over the top on that stuff. But unfortunately, when you see playing out what you're seeing, you go, okay, well, there you go. There you have it. So we definitely are in the war of our life. There's no question about that. And there's a lot of different scriptures that kind of can guide you on that one. So Steve mentioned about the Leviathan. So Key of Enoch, chapter 206, Key 206 on page 228 of the book. It talks about from verse 11, about verse 10, it says, or verse 9 actually, we're told in this key that fallen language patterns don't exalt creation, but create three-dimensional chemical enslavement within fixed magnetic fields. If we only listen to the language of finite science, which is obsequious to the lower heavens of the galactic snakes, we'll not be able to go on and reunite with other galaxies, but will remain locked in our immediate system, believing it's the be-all and end-all of creation. When Enoch revealed this key to me, he showed me a picture of our galaxy as a tree of life with various branches for different star systems, so that it appeared as a tree of fire. And around this tree of life was a light spiral which had the face of a snake with the tongue of the computer program of galactic death. He showed me how higher star systems are actually coordinated by the technology of the higher evolution. And it says, today within our tree of life, mankind, we're listening to the computerized technology of the snake, which keeps saying things to us like there is no God. There is no life beyond. Do not question the knowledge of the high living God, for it's all here on earth. You are the living God. Stop where you are right now. And by doing this, it says we get trapped in the belly of the Leviathan, which is basically like the computer programming of control. And it talks about the importance of speaking in higher light language and using higher language transparencies of evolution and speaking what they call the Yotze Amaroth. So hence one of the reasons why we're doing a lot more, webinars and trainings and stuff like that in this kind of area and activating light frequency. And I've been getting a lot of messages to start doing more of that again. So I've been working in the background on preparing stuff to start teaching on this and covering topics like DNA ascension and DNA activation, for example, which is going to be really important to protect yourself into spiritual war, is being able to activate your DNA strands fully. So as an example, and this is something I learned with a guy called Toby, some of you know, about the importance of knowing the light language and knowing the different commands. And I noticed as soon as I did that, you can kind of go to that next level and you start to activate your dormant DNA strands, because scientists find that generally your about 97% of your DNA isn't actually working. Now, as we well know, that it's not dormant DNA. It just means our capabilities are not being activated. So what he talks about in this key of Enoch, he says that we have to open up the body of the Leviathan and move outside of this. It's just interesting for me how this is all coming together and stuff like that. And something that he says here is the Leviathan is a traditional symbol which the ancients took to mean the entrapment of man within primordial spirals, which deny the ongoing glory and presence of the eternal mind. And he says, as long as we think we are God, we miss the angelic radiations of true creations and remain locked in space and crucified to the body of relativity. And we start to fall victim to false energies and what's called fallen optimum, or lower mind energies, or lower astral beings. So pretty much what he's saying here is that it's lower astral entities and beings, or fallen optimum, who are pretty much, pride and ego and those lower energies that we experience, but it's trying to make us to fall back into those lower energies, back into that fallen optimum or fallen mind energies, which stops us from humbling ourselves to the higher intelligence. It's designed to prepare us to go into fifth dimensional realities, or what's called the higher frequencies. So it's designed to stop us from going in there and keep us from stepping into that. So a lot of this key talks about light language and speaking in a higher frequency kind of stuff. So it's very, very interesting. And the other key which I got led to the other day was key 215. And it actually talks about on page 306 or paragraph 17, how crosses were even used in the time not only of Christ, but before that, like a cross of light. And they actually meant to mark the sacred places on the earth where the Merkaba came from the heavens to the earth and rose again from the earth to the heavens. In other words, that kind of light energy that connects us between heaven and earth. Now, one of the very interesting things about this was he then goes on to say about the tripartite being and the three energies of body, soul, spirit. And so that's why in the Bible, he said, you read about Moses, Jesus, and Elijah all came together in the New Testament from the higher heavens in the physical plane to accomplish that which could not be simply accomplished through the etheric planes. So in other words, it's interesting because I've been teaching etheric body clearing, but this is saying that the etheric body can cleanse you in your physical and your mind on a certain level, but it's even higher frequencies that you need to access to be able to, in a way, deal with what's going on, move into light frequency and win this war, so to speak. And another way of putting it is escape the matrix or leave the matrix. So he says the etheric plane, and that it all makes sense of a lot of stuff which I'm going to be sharing on today. So whether or not you're understanding this is kind of like an activation I'm doing here right now, and I'm sure you can feel it. So don't think so much about it. But and generally what he's saying here in simple terms is the etheric body starts clearing you on that 7th, 8th chakra kind of level. But to start really accessing what's called that 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th chakra level, where you're accessing your oversoul, your higher self, your Christed center, which is a proven like your God self, that requires you to actually bring all these forces together and accomplish which could not be done through the, as I said, through the etheric planes. So it's really, really interesting. And even in the book of Moses that was actually written by, that talks about Enoch and how this all kind of links together. So in the book of Moses, chapter 7, I think I read this last week, there's a lot of different clues. It's about, this has been one of the books that have kind of been kept, as I see it, very difficult to get hold of, but is a very important book. And I'll just take you, so verse 26 and verse 25, and when you read all of Enoch's writings, it specifically was said that it's going to be relevant for the last generation preparing for what's called ascension. And all the teachings of Enoch started hitting the planet around the 1940s, came after being thousands of years disappeared, or hundreds of years, thousands of years. And then, of course, we had the Keys of Enoch in 1973. We've got the Book of Moses, which talks about Enoch, and which came in the 1800s through the Mormon Church. So it says here that he beheld Satan, and he had a great chain in his hand, and veiled the whole face of the earth with darkness, and he looked up and laughed, and his angels rejoiced. And I'll share that one because Grace was saying before we started today about the whole nature of darkness and what's hitting the earth, and how slowly this darkness is filling, like we're moving into the night, but the morning will surely come. And why do I share all this? To scare the crap out of you? No, it's good to more know or understand this stuff, because we're not people. I don't think we're not stupid. I mean, people, you're feeling the war. And often, and I think a lot of people feel that they're going crazy. Mental health specialists are saying people genuinely believe they're going crazy right now. They're checking it everywhere for mental health, for suicide watch. And he said, my personal opinion is a lot of these people who think they're going crazy actually aren't. It's the opposite. They're actually waking up. They're seeing the truth and they don't want to admit the truth. So they're in this conflict, which says, I want to hold on to my way of life. I want things to stay the same. I like the world the way it was before. You know, it was safer. I felt better in this world. And that's what deep down is this natural thing in us, that we don't really, really want to change things. We want to stay in terms of online with exactly with what we know to be comfortable. But deep down, people know that something's changed on the planet. There's been a change of regime, like a change of government. And when I say change of government, I'm not just talking about the clown shows that go on with the political, where people get put into place and it's just all a big sham. I'm talking about who's really controlling the world behind the scenes. Back in 2019, some of you may remember, but I shared a message I was given where I actually was shown there'd been a regime change happen in the spirit, and it was preparing for, a very tumultuous decade that was coming up ahead in preparing the planet for ascension. But we're entering into what the Dead Sea Scrolls talk about as the war between the sons of light and sons of darkness, which would be led by Belial, the prince of demons, would lead that war against Michael and the archangels of God. And I said this would be a much different regime. It would be stricter, it'd be more brutal, and be a lot more kind of regimented. And we would see a push towards a new world order, which is what we've been seeing happening. So it's a really good time if we're aware and realize that, exactly as Malcolm said to me, this guy coming to Albany, all of us would much rather not have a fight. I mean, I would rather live a simple life, just go. And look, I'm not saying we don't enjoy life, quite the opposite. When you're in a war, more than ever, you ought to make sure you take time to rest, we take time to relax, we take time to enjoy life, we keep ourselves stress-free by breathing. But weirdly enough, for me, I find the more I'm aware what's going on, the less stressed I am and the better health I've become, because you start to face the truth rather than living in an illusion or denial. So that's probably the starting point of spiritual warfare, is just to face the truth. If you know someone wants to beat you up, there's no point pretending they're not while you're getting beaten up. You're better off to own the fact you are being beaten up, not numb yourself to it and then fight back. And it's people who get bullied often are trying to avoid a fight. And I know I was like that. Whereas when you're in a fight, whether you like it or not, you're either going to be beaten up or you're going to push back. So I feel today it's a good time hearing what everyone was saying. I think really right now, rather than going crazy, quite the opposite. I just see people are waking up now. And the reason that we think we're going crazy is because people go, well, there's a conflict which really wants things to stay the way they are. Just in a text chat, if you can relate to that, just say yes or just make a comment. Can anyone relate to that? Yeah, Steve can. Yeah, it's very much like that, Sheldon. Yeah. And look, it's inspiring and great when you start to realize the truth. Graham, yeah, so it's good to see that the men straight away stepped up, because usually it's the women who are aware, but it's good to see first 3 messages all coming from men. Because it's very important that the men step up. And someone was saying before this started in the group discussion, how every area of society has been hit. And it's been a big Leviathan or spread octopus, which has been aiming to really, in a way, because you've got to take war, you've got to break down any potential issue which could be a problem for you to win the war. So I think a really good example is how men have become less manly and encouraged to be that way. And I saw a very interesting Facebook meme yesterday, or actually podcast, which was by a woke liberal woman. And she said it was really interesting. She said, I'm in conflict because she said, I'm now seeing the reason I'm single. She said, because all the woke men are actually quite feminine. And she said, generally the really manly men who are real alphas are generally quite conservative. They've got quite strong views, quite strong principles. They're more what we call right wing. And I believe in being liberal and tolerant. So now I'm kind of conflicted. You know, do I want to just settle for a woke liberal man, which I don't, or do I take a man that goes against what I believe in? And it's like, in a way, I want it both ways. And I saw that really, 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 really interesting. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. You get men to become less manly and get women to be less feminine, you can very easily get people off center. Whereas when men step up and start to speak their truth and become masculine, and women be feminine and provide the nourishment that we need as men to stop us being single-minded and getting caught up in our own little things that we do as men. And, you know, you women know what we mean, how we get caught up in our little kind of obsessions and like tunnel vision. So that's where we need the women to be able to get us back into our hearts and remind us about these sort of things. But I'm sure the women would agree, yeah, you want the men to step up and lead. You know, it's the men who should be stepping up on the farmers' laws, for example. It's the male farmers. I'm not saying the women don't. The women can galvanize and be the biggest support, but the number of women I've met who said it's the men who've got to step up and push back. And so let's just kind of go in here. So today I want to share a bit more about some practical tools in spiritual warfare and just give some practical tips and get started on a series on that. So I'm going to go through that and focus on one in particular that I'm hoping will really help to get everyone started. So who would like to start with the Lord's Prayer? That was a long start, I know.
Yeah, I'm happy to, Warren.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve.
Hang on, my screen's just gone blank. Alrighty. The prayer of Yeshua. O thou from whom the breath of life comes, who fills all realms of sound, light, and vibration. Your light is experienced in my utmost holiest. Your heavenly domain abides in me. Your will is manifested in the universe, all that vibrates, just as on earth that is material and dense. Thank you for your wisdom, understanding, assistance to manifest our daily needs. Dissolve the fetters of faults that bind us, our karma, as we release the guilt of others. Let us not be lost or caught in superficial things, materialism, common temptations, but let us be liberated from everything that keeps us from our true purpose. From you comes the all-working will, the lively strength to act, the song that beautifies all and renews itself from age to age. Amen. Sealed in trust, faith, and truth, I confirm with my entire being.
Excellent. Thanks, Steve. Okay, so it's really good to understand, and something that Grace once said to me years and years ago when I first met her. She said, we're very much, the main war that we face today in the 21st century is frequency, or in the mind. That's the greatest ways you can attack people. And when you read the Old Testament in the Bible, or read the other different books, or the Bhagavad Gita, a lot of that may or may not have happened in the physical. It is strong evidence that it actually has happened, a lot of these events. But basically today, most of this is just simply what's happening in the frequency area. So we can see that, you know, there's so much you can do. And I think it was Grace talking about food. You know, if you get people eating food of lower vibration, too much of that can put people out of whack. And again, you know, you can't neutralize the frequencies of food and do all of that. But by and large, selling people crap food with lots of pesticides and lots of other stuff, or putting fluoride in the water. It's very interesting because back in the 1930s, Henry Ford, the famous billionaire founder of Ford Motor Company, was very awake on all of this, and he knew about the secret societies, and he actually was quite a strong kind of King James, Bible, Christian, sacred scripture follower kind of a dude. And he actually knew who was behind all this. So he subsidized a lady called Dame Edith Starr, or Lady Queensborough, to write a book to reveal the frequency war that was going on even in the 1930s, and how everything from food to sacred symbols, he mainly focused on occultic symbols being misused. And to give you an idea what I mean, I remember years ago when I was doing energy work with a very gifted healer in this area, she said she actually pulled up a very strange symbol and showed it to me. And the moment I did this, fear hit me and I felt guilt hit me. And she said, do you want to know why I did that? She goes, because my testing's showing that there's a symbol that's binding your mind and causing guilt, and it's being used on you. So she said, we're going to scramble that symbol. And as soon as she did, I could look at the symbol and I was fine. I noticed a distinct change in my frequency. And this is what Henry Ford was writing about in his book. He started putting the book in every single Ford Motor Company car at the time. And after getting 3 factories firebombed within about 5 months, he decided to stop releasing the book. But that's basically on, I was given that when I was a guy who was involved in all kinds of work in the background, who'd been a secret agent at high levels of government and everyone. And so there's a huge war, food, symbols, even if you walk around and have a decent look at what's happening on the dollar note, there's plenty of it going on. And it's designed to program people into a way of thinking, into a way of being. And generally to have a compliant population or compliant things or control a person or situation, you need to control them in their mind and control them in their consciousness. And we've got this going on all the time. We've got it on social media. We've got it in waves. You've got people's different psychic attacks flying in their direction towards you, people who don't like you, people who do like you, all that kind of stuff. Now, keep in mind that in the book of Proverbs in the Holy Bible, it says that an undeserved curse or psychic attack will never come to rest on your soul. In other words, let's just say that you really do believe you're a child of God and you know that prosperity is your divine right, then there's no point having an attack upon you on your belief around prosperity. But let's just say that you have a great fear that governments will come after you, then that's an area where you become vulnerable to psychic attack, as an example. Or let's just say you've had a lot of health issues or traumatic relationships and you have this deep fear in your relationship, but you're going to, as soon as you get in a relationship, you're going to get X, Y, Z happen to you. That becomes an area of attack or manipulation. So thoughts, traumas, wounds, tears in our hearts, our etheric body, our frequencies, all this kind of stuff, it's a fairly major thing that we're dealing with right now. And generally right now, more and more people are waking up to realize this, the reality of the spiritual war that we're in. And whether we like it or not, we need tools to combat it. So especially if you're living in Western governments and seeing what's going on, I was even reading now, and I think it's in Canada. I know Sheldon, he lives in Canada. There's a few different people here. Don't know how true this is, but there's been in Canada and in New Zealand and a few other places now, you can even get banks credit cards decline or other challenges now just by having the wrong political views. And certainly in America, that's the case, but it's becoming more and more frequent. So as of course, people in Russia are finding out just by living in Russia right now and having a regime out of favor with the New World Order group is, like literally getting money to people in Russia is very difficult. Or as Aidan said, just happened to Nigel Farage, happened to Joe Rogan at one stage and things like that. So we're in a frequency war, no question about it. And it's really good to get back to the basics because it's easy to get caught up in the physical. But we're not wrestling against flesh and blood or human governments. That's not what we're dealing with, but we're dealing with dark beings and higher consciousness and wicked forces. And what's interesting is even people like JP Sears, a comedian. I don't know if anyone saw this, but he came out, JP Sears is pretty funny. He does a lot of kind of satire on the whole thing. But he's gone from a guy who was not into this at all in the last few years to very much about using his comedy to bring awareness on issues and kind of about the wokeness and the craziness. And he actually did one of his few serious videos he's ever done, Why I Now Believe in God. we openly said, I always thought that was just an illusion, and it's just like it's all an energy, and it's like, and now I'm now openly admit right and wrong. I was wrong what I said before, but there is this, and there is standards, and there is right and wrong, and there is things, and it's quite a powerful video when he talks about that as he started to realize this. It's very interesting because I can remember in COVID about 3 years ago, I did a webinar in the early stages, and I was teaching on this kind of stuff and bringing awareness about it. And there was a guy who came on and actually said to me, that's so interesting, because he said, I used to be a Satanist and working with negative energies and manipulating consciousness and all that. And he said, I kind of laugh when I see people doing these kind of webinars, because he said, they have no idea what they're talking about. He goes, we know how the realms work. We know that these beings, we know that there's good and evil. We know that there's these like light beings, and there's this force and this war going on at all times. And he said, and because most people, he actually said, are so effing stupid, he said, we could just do what we want with them. Because it's really intriguing to watch you teaching this stuff, because what you're saying is right. He said, this is exactly what goes on. For me, that was really great to hear it, because look, I'll openly tell you every now and again when I'm teaching this, I'm like, God, you know, why am I saying this? You know, people, I mean, am I really kind of just going too extreme in this? What will people really think? And what I'm saying, I go through all that kind of stuff. I'd love to say I don't, but I do. I'd say most times I speak on this, I battle with that. And it encourages me when I have that happen. It's happened a few times, in fact. I've had guys sit down and chat with me. I met a guy who was a 32nd degree Mason, like very high up in this kind of stuff. And I helped him out and saved him in his, at the time I didn't know he was one, but I saved his business in terms of some things I did for him. And when really, I took a bit of a risk to do so. And he was very grateful. He repaid the favor for me when our computer systems collapsed. And then we became friends, and I found out he was a Mason, but he didn't really want to be there anymore. And I actually said to him, you know, you guys have got all these secrets. And to cut a long story short, I asked him, and just about everything I'd heard on the internet, or most of it, I found to be true. He confirmed it to me. And he talked about Lucifer, how the whole thing worked. And that's what he said to me. He goes, most people who run churches are absolute idiots. He goes, they got no idea. And he goes, well, I laugh at them. He said, because we can manipulate them so easily. So it's interesting, you know, how we are in this spiritual war. And it's one of the strategies that when you read about the dark and what those who are behind all this, is that the first thing they want to do is get people believing there's a load of bullshit. Because if you can get people believing it's a whole lot of bullshit and focus on the physical, you can generally win pretty easily. And let's face it, I mean, going against those who are doing what behind whatever's trying to happen with the farmlands and the stuff like that, it's formidable opposition that you're dealing with. And those of you who are farmers on the No Illusions, you're dealing with formidable opposition. And not just formidable, but one who right now shows no intention of budging. It's clear that whoever's directing the state of Western Australia and Queensland, it's not just a local politician, it's some bigger group behind them who's been driving the whole thing with COVID between everything else. There's definitely some new world force that's driving the whole thing. There's no question about it. So that being the case, this how do you deal with this? One of the things we do in the background is we do protection. I mean, there's a great group of ladies who, you know, work with Christine and Grace and others who are doing work behind the scenes to do intercession or energy work to really work on the cities. Those who've been to Raymond Grace's Change Your Energy, Change Your Life, ones that we've done, have seen, you know, we've been able to make some kind of difference, being able to, you know, shift energy of cities and see things like that. And we've seen some real, in their case, we did work on Baltimore and saw a 72% reduction in crime. But for me, the biggest thing is, are we doing enough? And I think I would love to see a lot more people doing this. I personally had a vision years ago of seeing pretty much every day, constantly, you've got people working on your cities and on your countries doing work to clear the energies. There've actually been times in history where whole cities have changed and had major government overhauls. Pastor Don Rogers, a friend of mine, tells us in 1987, he got led to go on a period of fasting and prayer, and he and his church, and they did that. And they were praying for the city of Perth and for a break, because at the time, you had Brian Burke running it and a whole lot of corruption going on. And one particular day, they felt to go down to Parliament House, and they did some particular rituals following the book of Joshua to pray to break down the dark strongholds that were over Parliament House, bringing corruption. And when they did that, they all felt a major release. They felt something had shifted. And Don turned around smiling and said to his people, well, let's just see all the ferrets come out of the woodwork. Within a week, WA Inc. broke. And one of the biggest scandals in the history of the state, many politicians went to jail and various others, and saw a very big cleanup of the police force and everything. And there's no question in my mind that was Don's prayer. In fact, when they studied any major awakening in the city, it's nearly always been preceded by intercession, by spiritual warfare, by people getting busy in breaking strongholds, powers of darkness. It's even said in C.P. Wagner's book about how to win your city back using spiritual warfare, and talks about Argentina and various places where they saw major changes in cities. But it's talked about like John, the great apostle, and how when he went into Ephesus and when he walked in, when everyone who'd gone into Ephesus generally either got killed, who tried to preach a message against the ruling elite of the day, who got either killed or kind of shut down, he just walked in with so much authority, knowing who he was, and he challenged the leaders to a duel. He said, all of us will go into the middle of the city, we will pray and to our different gods, and whoever wins, the other ones, he said, I'm happy that if your God wins, that I die. But he said, I'm going to pray that my God will strike all of you buggers dead. And of course, they were terrified and they refused to do it. So he then just ordered a clearing of the city, went in front of all of the rulers. As soon as he did it, in front of everyone, the statue collapsed and broke, and of course, result in a big clean out of the city. And Peter, if you ever want to read interesting stuff on that, you read C.P. Wagner's stuff where he talks about different cities where those things have happened in real time today. So we're not going to see any major breakthrough in what we're seeing without things happening behind the scenes to support whatever farmers, whatever people are doing, whatever others are doing across the land. There's many people who are stepping up, pushing back. There really are. I think we have a lot of people who are trying their blooming ass off. I can see these activists on Facebook who are pushing. There's farmers who are stepping up to get out there and form action groups. There's guys like Travis Carter with One Nation and others. There are a lot of people in our country who I honestly believe do not like what's going on in Australia. People in America who don't like it pushing back. America, you're having interesting things like the Supreme Court are now directly starting to hold against a lot of this woke agenda. There's a court case that came out last few days, some extraordinary court cases, for example, stopping the discrimination where racism like African Americans got favored over others and in things like that. And I'm not saying all of their decisions are necessarily good or bad or whatever, but there's definitely this war happening where governments are trying to do one thing, courts trying to do another thing and stuff like that. And so we really are dealing in an interesting time. And my challenge to everyone today is whether you like it or not, we're all in a war. I wish we weren't. I can openly tell you I wish we weren't. I'd love to say, oh no, this is great, this is fun. It's not fun, but we can make it fun. And especially if everyone steps up and starts to get busy and get back to intercession, get back to whatever work that needs to get done to clear these powers. And the truth is, in the army of God, we need lots of different people doing many different roles. You've got plenty of people right now, I think, who do want to take action in the physical. There seems to be more people who want to do something. Do we have enough people? We have plenty of people doing love and light, but do we have enough people doing really effective spiritual warfare to clear and break the powers of darkness over cities and over the countries and start to create the environment energetically for change? I don't know. I think at the moment, you can see what's happening. We're not making enough ground. That tells me that we definitely need more to the cause. And the good thing about all this stuff is that science is now starting to back this up. But even if you start to think, I don't know about all this kind of stuff spiritually, let's have a look at the science. There's plenty of science now showing all this, like quantum physics is showing and backing all this up. And the placebo stuff, for example, people being healed of brain tumors just because they believe that the water injection is real. That shows you this. These are some of the scientific principles. So even if you don't know about the spiritual side, if you've got people working directly on shifting and focusing on a change in society and the kind of society we want, can you just imagine if enough people were doing that, the change that we start to bring in by actually starting to see a different society, seeing an abundant society, seeing us hold our freedoms, seeing us hold a way where, Indigenous rights are respected in a way that's not political, where everyone's working together, things like that. And how we're all interconnected. Reason we're feeling all this is because we are interconnected. So not just spiritually, it's scientific. So let's just have a look a little bit at some tools to protect ourselves and what we've been doing. I'm going to focus on one in particular today, but I'm just going to walk you through the normal protection ritual that we do in any kind of intercession or energy work over a city or, over basically our lives or whatever else. So because we manifest our worst fears. So if our consciousness is programmed with fears, we'll do that. Whereas we can transform the energy and we can change our etheric field. We can bring protection to our etheric field. And I've actually learned one thing working with this guy, Malcolm Brogwell. I mean, I knew this before, but Malcolm has particularly, I discovered, for example, I couldn't understand why. I'd do all my protection and it would work, but then I was often still vulnerable in certain areas of my life. And I discovered, for example, that I had direct tears around my auric field. So in some of my higher, more external out bodies. So more in my morphogenetic area, I was having some fissures or tears, which was leaving me open to attack. So I did a number of sessions to clear them out and get them fixed up and healed. And discovering how this is where portals and other stuff were getting into me. And it's been a profoundly interesting journey to see and learn all this kind of stuff as I've been learning and finding out more how this works. And so realizing that if we're going to win this thing, we've got to start finding ways to heal all this within ourselves and then find ways to start to gain ground again. So what we do to practical ways to protect ourselves and create a light shield, we start by balancing ourselves, because if you're extreme on either form, in fear or overexcited, so we always start by doing this. And I mean, the reason that I use a dowsing rod, for example, often, I find that people in the physical realm, it helps to see a practical physical tool. And often many great prophets, even in the Bible, always had their magic stick. And the stick isn't what's magic. It gives people a reference point to help them. It's why, for example, anesthetics work really well when you go to the dentist or doctor. It gives you a reference point that makes you believe that you can be numb to the pain. As Richard Bandler showed, you don't need anesthetics. You can get dental work done without it if you believe that your pain receptor can be shut off. And you would get many of his patients getting dental work done with no anesthetic. Now, I haven't certainly taken that step yet. But so I use this because the very nature of watching the stick even move can be quite hypnotic and quite soothing. And whether it's magic, whether it's just hypnotizing, whether it's just a placebo, who cares? The most important thing is that we get balanced. And what we've found by changing energy in Sightless Find is your intention is what creates all outcomes. So intention, for example, when I do this, is to check polarity and align with the universal energy field, align the Schumann resonance, and balance hormones, emotions, and magnetism. I have no doubt this works. I've been using machines and testing myself doing this and seeing before and after to infuse flower essences. And as many of you know, next Sunday or Saturday, I'm running a one-day online workshop called Be Your Own Physician, where I'm actually going to be teaching people. And I'll be showing you videos where I've done this. I've had before and after on digestion, flower essences. And that's made me realize, God, if it's working on my physical body, this is working in this area as well. I think we can do a lot. Brett Stewart, in his remote viewing experiment, for example, he had 4 non-religious people do a remote viewing consciousness on what was really going on our planet and life after death. And what Brett found, it was in complete shock, was that we're surrounded by a frequency fence, and basically the whole of Earth is in a kind of prison planet, which keeps people locked in a lower frequency by lower astral beings and energies and ghostly forms who are parasites sucking people and using a system of control. And it was a result of losing a war. That's what the 4 remote viewers found. So we are in this war. It's coming to the surface, and it's time to face the truth and stop living with our heads up our ass. So it's taking a bit of time to balance the energies, because what I'm doing is balancing the group, anyone who's listening to this, and I'm even creating an intention that we can balance things in the frequency of our cities, of our planets, and where we are. And it's taking a bit of time. Okay, now it's been done. So now to create protection around ourselves, which is the second step, just breathe in through the nose for 4. Pause. And out through the mouth for 6. So first we're balancing the energies. Keep in mind that the breath, or the ruach, is like the Holy Spirit. It's the alm. So you can just breathe, or you can even chant the sacred word, alm. So as it's coming out, just bit longer than 6, but you would all feel your energy raise in vibration if you did that. So do it once, do it 2 more times. And one more, and you want to keep your back as straight as you can when you're doing this. And when you do that, keep your tongue on the roof of the mouth. That connects you with the divine. So by now you should be breathing a lot more rhythmically and slower. Who's already noticed that their energy is balanced more and expanded, and you feel your energies increase just by those 3 steps already? Just type a yes if you have in the text chat or something. These are all established principles used by the ancients. You awesome. So now another one is project a golden vortex spinning clockwise. Just imagine it. Keeping in mind that imagining things is even more powerful, is just as powerful as physically being there, is what they've found. David Walcott in the synchronicity key found whether it's a mental projection or an actual thing, the results were still the same. So just imagine it clockwise at the speed of light. At the speed of light. And just get a sense I'm doing this to activate the Merkaba, is why I'm doing this. I'll explain that in Okay, so I just wanted to kind of, that's why I took a bit of time there. I really wanted to just explain this a little bit better for you and why we're doing this. Because often we just do these things, but this is when you do it at the speed of light, you're actually activating Earth's energies from the key of Enoch, from what Dr. Adrian Clark finds. The Merkaba is very powerful. It's a natural heaven to earth connection, like a tornado or vortex or whatever, which spins around us. In fact, if you could actually activate your Merkaba of your physical body, you would time travel. And in fact, in the keys of Enoch, in the first chapter, when Hertak went into the realms of the Father, it specifically said he was activated in his Merkaba by Archangel Metatron. So all of you got that sense. And what you can also imagine it doing is it's clearing out all incompatible energies. Dr. Adrian Clark, in his Earth's Energies books, talks about the power of a tornado. Now, project a white crystalline pyramid surrounding you or the city or region or whatever's being cleared. So let's just get let's just project a white crystalline pyramid over the whole group. Let's just project it over all the farms right now in Australia, in the Western world. Just imagine your particular city or region. So right now I live in West Australia, so I'm very focused on all the farms and the farmland right out, especially around Wagen, around Narrogin, where people in our group, really all the farms all through that area. And then imagine over our whole group and anyone listening to the webinar. You should be feeling the energy keep increasing as we're doing this. Now, don't get caught up so much with these lower things. The main thing is to call in the 5 archangels, Uriel, which we just invite, and we always invite with love. We call them in, give thanks for them being present, because they love to help with this kind of work. So Uriel in the north, Michael in the south, Raphael in the east, Gabriel in the west, and Metatron above. And if you feel to invite any others in, you can, depending on what you're doing. Sometimes we get led or feel the presence of some others in the room or in the group. In this case, I'm not feeling anything particular, just feeling the power of Christ, the power of the Father. Then what we do is let's just release any false spirit guides or unhelpful beings. So we command that all false spirit guides, demons, spirit entities, sorcerers, human spirits, or any other unhelpful beings not aligned with the order of Melchizedek, order of Enoch, and office of the Christ to leave now. Oh, I could feel that the moment I did it. So that's anything in the pyramidal area. So why am I doing this? I'm doing this because basically the command does the work. First, we've created a protective environment for them to be expelled. False spirit guides are beings that not necessarily are evil or whatever, but just can be often very unhelpful. And especially, for example, you could have spirit guides that are well-meaning that could actually mislead you, like with this heritage thing and what's going on. I have no doubt that politicians are being misled by false spirit guides who are telling them you're doing this, you're helping the Aboriginals, and these, it's kind of teaching these white farmers a bit of a lesson or whatever can be said. And they can sound all good and they kind of mean well, but they're basically misaligned spirit guides. What I even often do is let's just upgrade all the spirit guides in this area to be aligned with the previous slide, the Order of Enoch and the Council of Nine, or the Office of the Call, or the Christ Consciousness. Let's just upgrade in our state, in our region, in our area, that this be the case. Keep in mind, there's a very interesting scripture in the Bible, for example, and in which talks about how you take control of a city true to law. That's how you do it. And in fact, 1 Kings 21 talks about taking the properties that belong into farmers. It's interesting if you ever want to read an interesting scripture on that, 1 Kings 21. So this one here, we're upgrading all the spirit guides and removing the false ones. If anyone noticed and felt any shift there, just type in the text chat. Just let me know that you did, because I felt a fairly major shift and I'm still shaking a bit. There's definitely a bit going on here right now. Yeah, a few people feeling it. Good. Now, and again, all this stuff I'm teaching you today, this is stuff which we've learned from years, and every single one of these points is a webinar in itself. And I'm actually inclined in our series to do that, cover each of these things one by one. If you ever read, for example, books like He Set the Captives Free by Rebecca Brown, anyone that I've just about ever met who's come out of Satanism, they all say straight away, they said, people who know the blood of Christ, we can't do much about them because it like creates an angelic protection which makes them impenetrable. And the Rebecca Brown's book, He Came to Set the Captives Free, the lady there, who's one of the highest satanic priestesses, says, we once tried to attack a pastor and stop his church because of the work it was doing, and we couldn't get near the guy because he clearly had a good prayer team but knew how to use the blood of Christ. We just couldn't get near the guy. So in the end, we were trying to get him by tricking him, by, trying to trick him to give up his belief system and just things like that. So the blood of Christ is one of those. So we're going to command and pray that the blood of Christ protects and covers everyone in this group who's listening and who's believing in the Christ and accepts the benefits of his prayer. And I give thanks that all karma, sins, ancestral, generational, of our land, of ourselves, of our families, of this group, whether intentional or unintentional towards each other, cleansed and forgiven and released. And I felt like a little wash come in my heart then. And that full angelic protection be given to this group, to the farms and everything. Now, keep in mind, what we're doing here is very powerful. You're going to feel a huge difference after this today. Keep in mind, it's like clearing your house. If you don't take action and start to use this or create groups of prayer for yourself, your families, or your cities, in a week or two's time, your house will be dirty again, maybe less. So this is something that daily or some kind of consistency is very important and very helpful. Use the flower of life. You can use any sacred symbol or activation, but that's a well-known one. So let's just use that today. So let's just infuse this into our third eye and imagine it in all of our chakras and physical surroundings and covering all of the farms. Just imagine and see the flower of life on every single farm in your state. Let's just do this. So what we're doing today is we're trying to give a bit of help to those who are doing the important work in the physical, because this work means nothing if people don't take action. But the people taking action will find it a heck of a lot harder if we're not doing this kind of stuff. And then we normally pray, you can pray one of the Psalms, Psalm 23 and Psalm 91. There's a couple of people here in our Pistis Sophia teaching, and they know and they remember me teaching why Psalm 91 actually a very powerful psalm in dealing with the lower level archons who control this planet. They're actually mentioned here specifically in this psalm. So let's just read this one. In fact, I'll get someone to read this. Who would like to read Psalm 91? Be good if one of the farmers read this.
Yeah, I can, Warren.
Awesome. Thanks, Fiona.
I'm just trying to zoom it in. Bear with me. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in him I will trust. Surely he shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flies high by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in the darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 by thy right hand, but thou shalt not come nigh thee. Only with thine eyes shall thou behold and see the reward of the wicked. Because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation, there shall be no evil before thee, neither shall my plague come nigh thy dwelling. For he shall give angels charge over thee to keep thee in all thy ways. They shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. Thou shalt tread upon the lion and the adder, the young lion and the dragon shall thou trample under feet. Because he has set his love upon thee, and therefore I will deliver him. I will set him on high, because he has known my name. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble, and I will deliver him and honour him. With long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation.
Brilliant, thank you. It's interesting because I might even find the teaching that we did on this one and see if we can release it, because this here, just this one scripture alone here, the dragon is talked about in Revelation in just about every ancient text about the controlling force and the Leviathan spirit that controls everything. You always see this dragon mentioned. So it's interesting that it says you will trample upon the dragon and upon the serpent. And Genesis 3 talks about the serpent as well, or the Leviathan. So the serpent and the dragon, you specifically mention that you will trample them underfoot. So it's a great affirmation to be doing, and why this is such an powerful psalm to read. The other one I put is a part 11. I mean, it's not really a step, but I'm just going to kind of mention it here. Is being willing to pay the price, just reminding yourself that to do this kind of work, there is a price. You know, you could be doing other stuff. You could be kind of going and doing other stuff and that, but there's a price to pay, you know. But in saying that, I think right now what makes it a bit easier is there's a bigger price by not doing something. And I think we would all agree, but there is a price to this work. And then once we've done that, we give thanks. And when I say give thanks and close it, let's just give thanks that the work has been done. And look, know that whatever has been done has made a difference. And and then that's basically done. Now, each of these steps are specifics. I was actually going to cover today, for example, a whole section on pyramids alone, but I might do that, but I'll do that next week instead. Because even pyramids, I'll be showing you why they're effective, and it's quite inspiring when I actually show you not just spiritual laws, but scientific evidence. Because what I'm finding is that if people can see the scientific evidence as well as the spiritual laws and match the two together, and this is one of the things why J.J. Hurtak's Keys of Enoch is so powerful. On the one hand, it seems the most extraordinary book with just all this strange spiritual stuff. But what many don't know is J.J. Hurtak is a brilliant professor of science, and he's actually written books on remote viewing, on new science, and scientifically brilliant what he's written. And he proves just about everything he says through science, even the whole idea of time travel and Merkaba and accessing the next dimensions and galaxies and universes and parallel universes. He shows scientifically why this is true, which is now, of course, being accepted more and more by scientists as true. So everything you'll be learning in the coming weeks, and it will give more confidence to activate all of this once you see the scientific basis as well as the spiritual laws and teachings of the yogis behind this. Okay, so let's just kind of take a glass of water and let's just share how you found that today. Who noticed the difference? Like, it was heavy at the start, I know. And in a way, I had to kind of do a little bit of a browbeating around to just kind of break up things a little bit, but now settle things. And I don't know about you, but I'm definitely feeling really centered, really calm, and the energies feel a lot more balanced. And those of you who've got pendulums or whatever can measure energy might choose to measure the energy of your state or your region before and afterwards and see what you get. And you might be quite surprised. Like West Australia, for example, I'm getting that whatever we've done has doubled the energy here, at least doubled it. I was getting around 20, 25,000 before we started, and now it's around 40, 50. Miko, big gust of wind outside. As I was clearing things in my region, I feel calmer and it's calmed down. Yeah, you often see physical confirmation. Aidan can feel a big change. Christine, great session. Thanks so much. I really felt that. Aidan, the process more disturbing than usual. Look, it was. We actually had direct opposition today, Aidan. It's kind of, I was like, and look, I'll be honest. Whenever that happens, often I'm very careful before I say things like that because it's very easy to come up and make big claims like that. So, but the more I was preparing for the meeting, that's why it took me a while to get going. I thought, God, if we got some real opposition today, we're really hitting something. I felt what everyone was talking about before the webinar, like Christine and Steve and others, you're right on track. That's all I know. You were nailing it, what you were saying. And basically forces that are bringing this in do not like being exposed. If you actually, one of the things with Satanism they'll tell you is the biggest thing they don't like is being exposed. Most of their agenda is it works in secret and deception. It's why it's secret societies, because when things are happening in secret and people don't know what's happening, it's easier. Whereas if, let's say, it all came out in the open and someone came out and said, hey, you know, we're running this secret government and we're going to take everyone's rights off you, people are not going to go, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. They're going to get pretty annoyed about it. And so the whole idea is to keep people enjoying life, caught up with sport, eating your food, and slowly poisoning to death. To kill people with arsenic, the easiest way to do it is put a tiny bit of arsenic in someone's coffee, you know, pretty much daily, and slowly that they will die without even realizing why they're dying. And I only know that not because I've done it, but I'm a big reader of crime fiction novels like Agatha Christie, Jack Reacher, and others. And that's one of the things that I learned from, I learned a lot of stuff from reading these books. So Graham felt the opposition. And yes, one of the great teachers in the secret societies once taught me that the whole philosophy is the best way to kill a population is slow arsenic poisoning. Don't take away too much of the truth. Give them most of the truth, but put enough lies in to kill them. So, yeah, people felt the opposition today. And main thing I would encourage you to do from today is, I think it's fair to say we need to, is that doing more intercession and doing this kind of stuff more consistently is really important. So I'm actually planning to, you know, when we put this up on YouTube and get this on our site, I'm even going to ask our team to break this up into 2 parts. And the actual 12-part series teaching, I'm going to ask to put that into a clearing section on our site and whatever else. And then, yeah, look, get it out there and encourage, you know, a 12-step clearing process you can use to work on your city. You know, the background behind it. Yeah, Christine, energy reading before 18K, now 37. Yeah, that sounds about right. Suzanne, gentle, peaceful, calm. On this property, Mother Mary was present. Thank you for the men realizing the potential. Yes, it was very encouraging today. I agree, to see the men usually being the first to comment. That's something I have not seen before on a webinar like this. That was a very encouraging sign to see. There's quite a few men on, and the men are instantly speaking up. You know, you've got me, you've got Aidan, you've got Graham, you've got Mark, you've got Sheldon, Steve. There's actually 6 men and 6 women. It's very rare that the men are equaling the women. That's actually a very positive sign. And especially the fact that it's 12, which is the ascension number, and you've got 2 6s, 6 6, like 666. So very encouraging to actually see the men stepping up. That's the part I like. So Aidan, sense to grey and Amanda, never had that before. That's pretty cool. Okay, so anyone like to get on the mic, like Steve or Grace. Aiden feels confidence return after 30 years. That's good. Keep doing the work, Aiden.
Yeah, Warren, the comment I'll make is that, and I guess it was like COVID times. It's a similar energy, like these the laws and the changes, and they will go to every state. I have no doubt about that. But it's quite frightening, and it, and I suppose that's part of it as well, is the fear, right? Fear and division, and so it's always empowering to have reminders about that we do have tools to combat fear, because when we see the world crumbling around us, and when we have attachments to that world, that spins the energy and brings the fear up even more. So yeah, it's good to have these tools.
That's a really good comment. You always have a good way of words, Steve, but yeah, I totally agree with you on that one. There's could not agree with you more. I think that the energy is very similar to COVID. I hadn't thought of it like that, but you're actually right. It's that same feeling that that basically we're having just before COVID started, or when it was in the beginning. You knew, oh shit, you could tell something was happening, and it's the same kind of feeling. Do you agree?
Yeah, totally. It's like it's unfathomable, as if they could do that, as if they would do that, as if this was really happening, right? It's that same, this can't be real. Surely there's someone within the government to stand up and say no. It's that same thing, but it just gets caught up in this big wave.
Yeah, it's kind of like, there's a movie called The Shawshank Redemption. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's the same kind of feeling where I remember Andy, the main character, when he's in prison, and these three guys get around him, and he realizes that they're actually going to rape him. And it's kind of like that absolute, like, you can't be serious. This is what's actually going to happen. And he didn't really push back at the time. He just kind of, and things like that. And then he ends up pushing back, and he tries to take them on. And of course, he ends up getting almost killed. And then he gets smart. He wins over the prison guard. I don't know if you remember that scene. He's actually a financial accountant, and he wins over the prison guard by offering him to show him. He hears the guy talking about an inheritance he's getting for $35,000, and furiously going on about the whole system and how corrupt and how they're going to take his money. And this guy's the most brutal of the guards, and he actually says to the guard, "If you trust your wife, I can help you not pay tax on that." And the guy's about to kill him, and he goes to him, "Are you bullshitting me?" And he goes, "No, I can show you, and I can even do it for you. It won't cost." And he goes, "But lawyers will charge you a fortune." And of course, it's a classic example of good strategy. And of course, he's going, "Yeah, the blood-sucking bastards." He's going, "Yeah, but I can do it for you, so it won't cost you anything." He said, "All I would ask is that you would give some beers, free beers, to each of the cellmates. Nothing for me. I don't want anything." So he straight away removed any sense that this is about me getting a gain from you. I'm just basically, this is just to help you and also to help the prisoners. So the guard kind of didn't necessarily get one over, but he goes, okay, and he ends up getting him to help him. And then, of course, the three guys, rape him and almost kill him. And then when the guys go to solitary, the first thing that the guard does is goes and beats the absolute crap out of the main ringleader, turns the guy into a cripple, and that ends the assaults. So he actually wins the fight in the end by being strategic and being clever.
Yeah, playing that long game.
Playing the long game. He kind of realized that taking these guys on, he was going to lose, but he found a backdoor way to win to deal with them.
Yeah.
I'd like to mention
something
about. I'd like to mention the fact that my sister has just spent 3 months in Spain walking the Camino, and also another friend who did a similar thing. They have both just arrived back in Australia about a week ago, and they said the culture shock of coming back into Australia was staggering. They hated it. All they wanted to do was hop on the aeroplane and go straight back to Spain. They were saying that the culture in Spain, everybody looks after everybody else, and people are concerned about each other, whether you're old, young, whatever. But she said that the energies here, especially around Brisbane, phenomenal. She said they're aggressive. They don't care about anybody else. It's me, and pushing in traffic. And she said she couldn't believe how nasty it had gotten in the 3 months that she has been away. And the closer she got to her home property, the other side of Kingaroy, she said the more friendly people became, because they're not as stressed as those who are in the cities. So I found that was actually quite staggering, because I've lived in the country all this time, and I'm not actually touched by a lot of what's going on in the cities, although I can feel it. But my mission is to hold the energies as high as I can, and by allowing my energy to be up, then I am also allowing much more to be infiltrated out into other people around. And I found that people appreciate that, even though they may not say so, but they are actually more willing to accept that they are beautiful beings. And I think slowly but surely we are going to win this war. We are winning this war, but we have to keep our vibrations up, and we also have to keep everybody just holding hands together, sending out the love, doing your crystals, whatever it is that you're doing. Pray, for God's sake, pray, because pray has such a wonderful beingness for it, and we don't realize the full potential of prayer. So thank you all for being on this webinar. And thank you, Warren, because you really allow all of us to be brought together into this beautiful rendition of love. Even though it might be a soft feeling, we are actually winning. Softly, softly, we'll do it. And the actions that we take, especially the farmers, we are being got at, and that definitely has to stop. But we will win.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Suzanne. Very much appreciate that. Okay, everyone. Well,
might
last
spin to finish if possible.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean it's heartening for me to sort of hear from you and Steve and others to sort of recognise that we're in a war. I think as time goes on, it's important to maintain flexibility and the ability to sort of move and act at a moment's notice. And sort of deal with and respond to what gets thrown at us, either from a distance or very, very quickly.
Yeah.
I found that in the past that has helped me survive. So I hope.
Brilliant. Thank you.
I hope that's of some use to people. It certainly has been for me.
Oh, excellent. No, thank you, Aidan. Yeah, no, well, like I said, I mean, it's a message I got to give, so we'll see what happens. But we're in a war, and we've got a bit of a fight ahead of us, so may as well enjoy it. Okay, everyone. Well, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Just to those who don't know, I think most of you already do, but if you don't, I'm going to be doing more on the practical side, because you're going to win the war. You definitely want to make sure you're in good physical health and good energetic health. So a lot of you, I think, are already coming along to this workshop. So yeah, by all means, I just put the link in the chat. If you want to come along, we'll be covering a whole lot of different stuff in this one, just that will help you in terms of, you know, these are the kind of things we're going to be teaching on. So much more how to infuse essences and health and healing and stuff that I've been using that's done a major difference to my health, and even some introductory dowsing principles, and just using this kind of stuff to actually not just for spiritual warfare like this, but practically to help you in your health, your body, your home, and your daily life. So just a bit of a helpful one. So if anyone's, I think most of you are coming anyway, but just if you're not, just this is the workshop, and this is the link. I look forward to seeing you there. And thanks for coming along, everyone. Have a really good rest of the weekend. Next week, we'll be teaching and continuing the series. I'll be teaching a little bit more on, I'll be teaching next week. My plan is the part 3 will be on pyramids. I'm actually going to be doing some specific work as to why pyramids are such an effective tool in protecting you and energizing your home, your family, and your health. So we'll see you all then. Thanks, everyone.